Hello and welcome to Education on Fire Show. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you taking the time out of your evening, or certainly if you're here in the UK, and maybe afternoon or even morning if you're in America, which is where I was last week. And so thank you for those people who, and Michael especially, who was there live on the show. We had a couple of technical issues, but that's one of the joys of being on Wi-Fi in random places around the world. So I appreciate your patience for that. But we're back in the studio today. We're back in a position to be able to share everything, and I'm really excited that we've actually got some guests in today to be able to talk about a couple of organizations and sort of have a chance to sort of share that sort of primary education feel in that kind of age group, but also spread that through to Will. He's going to be talking to us about his independent English organization as well. So, as you can see, Independent English and also Oxford School of Thought. I'm going to be chatting to Pip and Peter, and they're going to be telling us a little bit more about that and everything that they're going to be involved in, and how these two organisations are sort of linked in some way, but also sort of share that sort of common thought and common feel of what education is all about and what we're trying to do to support children, really. So as always, this show is basically here to support the Education on Fire podcast, which, as you can see, is on all of these platforms. If you go to educationonfire.com/listen, it takes you to this page, and then you can just click through, follow, subscribe, depending on what the platform offers. And in that way, you get the latest episode every Monday downloaded to your device, and then it's there to listen whenever you are ready. In terms of this channel, please do subscribe and make sure that you're up to date with everything that's going on. Hit that notification bell so that when we go live, especially if it's unexpected, you get all that information coming through. And if you're free and able, you can just join us, and then we're going to be ready to go. So, the Education on Fire show, basically, we're here to share a few things on a weekly basis, which are going to sort of hopefully give you some information and give you a little bit of inspiration in terms of what we do as part of Education on Fire, but also in terms of the people that I'm able to sort of share that platform with. So, I mentioned the podcast, which has already been out this week, so you'll have a chance to comment on that if you'd like to. It'd be great for you to put anything in the chat if you are watching live. Always great to see and hear what you think about what we're talking about now, but also from that previous episode as well. I'm going to share with you an archive podcast. It's with 360 or more podcasts which are on the platform already. You might have missed some of the earlier ones, so I'm going to share some of those so that might just give you pinpoint somewhere for you to be able to go back and take a listen as well. As I mentioned, you can put anything you like in the comments. If you'd like to share what you're working on, anything that's been happening, then feel free to do that as well. I'm more than happy to share those things as well if you've made the effort to come and be here live. We have the chance to share anything that maybe has been in the news from an education point of view. Might be worth speaking in a moment when everyone else comes on as well about maybe what's happened in the party conferences. There's been some interesting things said there. And also, as I mentioned, we have the opportunity, as we are this week, to have an interview and some guests on to be able to share those things as well. So this was the episode that went live on Monday. Socratic Experience with Michael Strong. He's an amazing educator. He's created his own online schools. He's got many years of experience, and it was really fascinating listening to him in terms of what his ideal was of education, and also the fact that some of the frustrations of the public school system, especially over there in America, and when actually wanting to create something which he believed in that people could buy into, I guess figuratively and practically, in terms of having the chance to really sort of learn with children at the heart of that kind of thought process and that education system. And that's really, of course, what we're here doing today is sort of sharing that as a possible sort of guiding light, really, as we sort of move forward. And I think especially as we get further and further into this century, I think it's going to be that sort of central idea of what children need, and also how they're going to go about having information but sharing the skills that they need, both in the workplace but also sort of more society at large. So yeah, so go do and check that out. It's 365 was the episode that went live this Monday. So without further ado, let me bring on our guests. So hi Will, hi Pip, hi Peter, great to have you here. And yeah, hello. Let's start with the hello, and then we can work our way around and we can find out a little bit more. So, Will, why don't you start? Tell us a little bit about your background and independent English.
Thank you very much. First, I just want to say thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. Really excited for the conversation today. So I run a project called Independent English. The goal is to promote learning, thinking, communication, creativity, things like this. I work with groups, I work with individuals all around the world, and yeah, they all have unique needs, different goals. And so I work to try to help them to accomplish their goals and yeah, strengthen their thinking, strengthen their mind, and the ultimate goal is to create a more harmonious world and a brighter future, more opportunity for everybody involved.
Yeah, sounds fantastic. And Will's going to give us a little bit of a presentation to sort of take us through a little bit of the way that he works and some of the things that he's involved in. So we'll get onto that very shortly. Thank you very much, Will. And Peter, tell us a little bit about Oxford School of Thought.
Well, thanks for having me, Mark. It's been a long time. I recall that I was on your very first podcast, I think.
Absolutely.
Or very close to.
Yeah, exactly. We were sort of sharing that sort of, or you were there in that sort of expert role, really, of having that kind of head teacher and
right.
Understanding of what was going on, as opposed to just me wanting to talk to lots of people about what was going on in the education world.
So, being an expert, I qualified as one under Michael Gove, I think. But that was about the time I retired, and I founded the Oxford School of Thought about that time, because what I discovered during a convalescent period after a heart bypass, that there were no think tanks for primary education. There weren't a lot of education think tanks in this country at that time, and so I could see everything else being represented on the news, but not education, and certainly not primary education. And the significant thing that I noticed was that whenever education was referred to, they were really talking about secondary education. And so I felt we ought to get a voice. And as a long-standing member of NAPE, I felt the National Association of Primary Education, I felt that voice should be out there. So we got OST going as the first primary education think tank of its kind, a unique being. And we do research and we publish reports, and we have an event coming up soon in November. And we try and raise the people's consciousness about the value of children in the primary phases. Early years and primary are the most important time in children's lives, in their education, in my view. I don't think that people understand quite how much formative stuff happens. People outside education, that is, outside particularly primary education, don't understand how formative those years are, don't understand that all that learning that's gone on before children are born, before they're in school, all those things, there's fantastic stuff going on, and the opportunity to mold children and to help children to develop themselves and to fulfill their potential is phenomenal in that age group. And it just strikes me that I talk to people in commerce and technology and so on, and they say, "Oh, it's really exciting. We're going to create a prize, or we're going to create, the possibility for some sixth formers to come and take part in our experience and to become really good engineers or fantastic scientists." Not recognizing and not understanding those children have already made the career decisions. They probably made them when they were 13 or 12 or 13, when their GCSE options were chosen, and that actually guides a career path. And it's breaking away from that and recognizing that you'd get much better results if you would concentrate on children under the age of 11. And you can actually encourage them and excite them about the whole idea of becoming scientists, engineers, anything you like, actors, and so on. So that's where it all came from.
And I think for me, certainly being involved with NAPE as well, the sense that the primary years aren't just to kind of get you ready for secondary school and then to get you ready for work. It's that kind of the value that you're learning and the importance of the here and now and the lessons that are happening on a daily basis. And like I say, that's then supporting that sort of natural tendency of the skills that you like and the talents that you have and all of those sorts of things. And I've said many times on the podcast, without that opportunity to have been exposed to music and had the opportunity to learn an instrument. I mean, I wouldn't be a musician, which is what I am today. And I think having, like you said there, those opportunities, the people going into schools talking about all manner of things in life from an early age, it just gives you that breadth of understanding and that breadth of knowledge and experience, which then is going to take you in one way or another, just because you're going to have a feeling about it which feels different maybe than another subject or another area. And it's such an important thing. So, Pip, tell us a little bit about your role in all of this, and how you're sort of supporting Peter, and also sort of your experience with NAPE as well.
Well, Pete said it all, really, and I just do what Pete says. But we set up our working partnership by running the Oxfordshire Head Teachers Residential Conference every year, probably for about 10 years, Peter, I would have thought. Then our very last conference, a live conference, happened just literally about a week before shutdown and COVID happened. And that's when Pete and I got talking about the Oxford School of Thought and what perhaps the possibilities would be to highlight what primary education really should be about. So to that effect, we have compiled, with the help of several experts, a report called A Vision for the Future of Primary Education. And it's been very well received. And the event that Peter mentioned, in fact, is being supported by the Royal Society of Arts and will happen in Oxford on the 29th of November at 7 o'clock in the evening. So if anybody's listening and they or looking, they want to come along, they'll be very welcome. And we somehow, thank you, Will, be good to see you. We must do our best to try and change the government agenda, which really we tried to do with the Oxfordshire Head Teachers Conference. And it could well be that Pete and I have a dossier talking about our sort of rebellious activities in the DFE. People might have read the leader in the Observer a couple of weeks ago about how various educationists have been had very lengthy dossiers kept of them. And I'm going to suggest to Pete that he and I might see, on request, you can get the dossier and find out what's been said about you and how your activity has been monitored. So that's all very exciting, I feel. And back over to you, Mark. Thank you very much for inviting me to give forth.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you for your enthusiasm for coming on. Like I say, it's all about conversations, and yes, if any of you are actually still here and want to be commenting, like I said, it can be something on something that we've actually been talking about. It might be something you're working on, something you just like to share, or an event you think would be supportive for people watching. Yeah, please do write that in the comments. It will be in the comments, and then I can bring it up on screen when we're ready to sort of share that and to do that. But yeah, you can put it in the comments at any time. Don't wait towards the end. Feel free to do it now, and we'll sort of integrate it into what we're doing and how we're going to make that part of it. So, Will, why don't you come on and share a little bit about independent English and exactly what this sort of presentation and sort of how it worked and how it's sort of part of what you're doing. So, are you ready to share, Will?
Yes.
Okay, let me just take you through then, and then we're now in a position so we can see your screen, and yeah, feel free to talk us through it.
Okay, so just a little background here. I maybe came to this gradual realization with many of the people that I've been working with that a lot of skills aren't really being adequately addressed in schools. Now, I work with a lot of East Asian students, so maybe we can say there's some, there's like a cultural lens that I'm coming into contact here. But regardless, I believe that creativity, critical thinking, these are really essential for success in the 21st century and the problems that we're going to be facing. So I decided I wanted to help to develop these skills, and so I've been working on this kind of over the summer, and this is what I have come up with. So would really be grateful for any kind of feedback that anybody here can give us, or yeah, if you're listening, anything that you can help me out, something that I'm missing or not considering, a way that I can improve. So here's basically the methodology. I'm looking for something very student led. I want them to choose the topic, and we'll get into depth in this. We'll explore. They will do this independently in between the sessions where we're meeting, and when we do meet, I'll help them discuss their problems and what they've discovered, kind of serve as a guide more or less as they're learning and exploring on their own. So at the beginning, I'm looking for a proposal, some kind of topic that they want to explore, and yeah. So these are kind of my questions for their proposals. The topic, what they think they might be able to learn, kind of a time frame, how much time we might want to spend on this, different steps that might be involved depending on what we're doing, and ultimately, I would like the findings to be produced or presented, we could say, in the form of some kind of tangible creative project. And I really think there's so many opportunities and possibilities to explore. I think this is really exciting. Some things could be like a movie, or even just a simple drawing, comic book, something really tactile like a clay, sculpture or figure, or I mean, there's so many things. And really, I think the best ideas will not come from me, but from the people that I'm working with themselves. So this is kind of the first step. And then once we choose a project, the structure of our sessions will be kind of like this. So yeah, we'll meet. We'll have a little warm up. How you doing? What's new? And then we will talk about what they've done since our previous meeting. What they've read, what kind of research they've done, how they've explored. What they've learned, maybe what they've made, and we can talk about it, analyze what they found, see what they learned, talk about the results. What kind of problems they encountered. I can help them maybe work on ways to overcome these problems. And yeah, so this is kind of the meat of our session. And yeah, we can do some learning together, some exploring, go down some rabbit holes, or yeah, whatever, wherever the session takes us, wherever we need to be. We should be flexible. And yeah, this is kind of this is what I'm trying to do. And then the next step, after that's done, we can plan the next steps. And ideally, I want the students to be leading these, them to determine what is they'll be doing, and yeah, how, kind of a plan of action, right? And yeah, we should be pretty specific with this, and it should be manageable, right? Like if we know it's exam week and we're going to have to do a lot of stuff for school, or we're going on holiday, maybe we don't need to do so much. But yeah, it should be realistic, right? And at the very end, what I would like to see is, yeah, the project, the product, whatever it is, and then ideally some kind of self-reflection, right? Like, what was the project? What did we learn from it? The time, the main challenges. If you could do it again, what would be different, right? Maybe we learned this is not a good strategy, and this is something that we can take with us going forward. And a little grade, what would I give this? So this is kind of the the system, the what you know what I'm trying to see, what I've developed so far. So yeah, if we have ideas about how to make this more interesting, more engaging, more accessible, whatever it is, I need some help here. So um, yeah, what do we think about this?
Well, I think from a starting point, in terms of, like you said, the idea of critical thinking and actually working in this way, it's a very exciting thing to adapt. And just so I'm clear, this is something that you're fitting around your normal schooling or around some of the other educational work that you're taking part in.
Well, so here's the challenge. A lot of the people I work with are
Uh, I think Will's
I'm
internet
not
may have
really a
just.
big taking this in with. I'm sorry, what's that?
Sorry, Will. I think you just froze there slightly, so we just lost a little bit of of the start of what you said. So yeah, just if you reframe that for us, we should be able to catch it again.
Yeah, of course. So a lot of the people I'm working with, they're more interested in assessments, tests, raising their reading scores and their speaking scores, and yeah, not as much, more tailored to the assessment. And this is not exactly where I want to be working. So I kind of got to sneak this in to maybe some of the students that can handle it. I work with a lot of non-native speakers. Some of their language levels aren't necessarily where this we could handle this. So but I do have a couple that I'm working on this exclusively, and so yeah, ideally this would be something that we're not working on other stuff. This is our thing. We're doing this exclusively.
Got you, Peter. You wanted to chime in there? You'll just have to unmute yourself there, Peter, for a second.
The self-assessment element that you put in at the end, Will, I think is a really good way in for those students who are focused on assessment to actually start to understand. I remember when I very first started teaching, I had a long discussion with my class about what an A or a one or whatever what it meant, whether A means anything or B, or is it actually more helpful to have a conversation about something, or more helpful to have a written comment about something? And this was really interesting because children would already, and these were year 5 children, 9-year-olds, who were saying it's really important, that I get a good grade. And it just struck me as really sad that that was the most important thing for them. And I think that it really helps them, I think, to understand that actually a number or a grade or a letter, are fairly meaningless, to be honest. It's actually much more meaningful to have a conversation about it, and especially if it's supporting the sort of things that you just talked about as well. I guess that you're talking about children who are probably secondary age that you're working with. But this is, I think, Pip and I would recognise this as a very primary approach, actually, a project-based approach, which we would recognise. And I think what's important about it is that you get that individual tutoring, that individual element in it, which of course we try and give to children in primary. So I think that they're good ideas that could be developed for that age group, certainly.
Yeah, I just wonder. It would be quite good, Will, if you said what range of age groups of ages you've worked with, and how you've approached those different age groups, and it's how you ask the questions that I think is the vital thing. And when you're discussing the projects, how you keep things, if you like, to use a cliched phrase, open-ended, rather than something that's leading them down a particular pathway. But I'd be interested to know, what age groups you've been dealing with. Let's say, over the past year or two?
Primarily primary, I would say. Maybe ages 8 to 12, I would say most are in there. I work with some adults. I work with a first year university student. But yeah, I would say primarily it's primary students.
Good.
Okay.
I think one of the biggest takeaways for me, carrying on from what Peter was saying, in terms of what students and pupils feel like in terms of an A grade or that kind of thing, is that they only really know sort of subconsciously and consciously of what they've been told. In this sort of high stakes education system we're living in now, it's all about exam results, it's all about a test, it's all about your GCSEs. I think when my daughter went to secondary school, the first day there at school was telling them how great the previous GCSE cohort had done and how they should be thinking about it already. It's like they're just transitioned from primaries. I mean, yeah, ridiculous in so many ways. But that's kind of what's happening on a daily basis, and where the pressure comes all the time. And I think from what you said, Peter, in terms of having people within the community and the business world, and people in sort of the larger expanse of the people in the community at large, when they're talking about, it's not about the grades that we're interested in, it's more about the conversation, it's more about your skill set, and they're hearing that from different areas, then I think they start to realize that actually, while maybe the school is really geared towards a grade because that's what they have to do currently, hopefully that might change in some stage. But supportive parents, think about the More Than a Score campaign, and actually people hearing that actually we appreciate the fact it's more about you as an individual than whatever your SAT results happen to be. Then they start to get a clearer picture about maybe what's important and why it's important, and they can start to sort of pigeonhole a lot of the things that they hear in the right areas, which I think will be a beneficial thing for everybody.
The other interesting thing could be, you work with children who come from very different cultures, who might find your approach initially both exciting but difficult and confusing and so on. Can you say anything about that?
Yeah, this is 100% true. The first couple times when I tried this, it's like, what do you want to explore? How should we go about this? What kind of project how can we present our findings? And it's like I'm speaking Russian. It's just we don't even have I don't even know how to answer this question. Nobody's asked me these kind of questions before. So I think there's pretty strong learning curve, and for me too, right? Like as the guide, I need to be able to ask the right questions to the right people in the right way at the right time. And it's very, I work with a lot of individuals, so like I try to meet them individually where they're at. This is really important. So yeah, knowing the right approach to take, the right questions to ask, and how much guidance to give them, and when to step in maybe and offer suggestions or help, and when to let them kind of struggle and figure things out. This is a challenge. I'm always going to be struggling with this.
And do you have resources that you can point them towards, Will?
Well, I guess it kind of depends on what we're working on. I mean, because I'm really new with this, a lot of it is internet based, right? Like, see what you can find on the internet. Find some videos that explain this or describe this. Let's try to do it in English, since we're supposed to be studying in English, right? Like, yeah, I kind of want to turn them loose on the internet. And I don't know, maybe all parents are not crazy about this, but I think these are really important skills. And yeah, like you said, it's really not too early to be learning about, it's never too early to learn about different stuff, right? And how to find information, what's good information, right? Like, I think there's no bad time to start working on this kind of stuff. And yeah, the sooner we can do it, the better, in my opinion.
But do you say to children, look, I don't know about your living environment because I've never visited your country, you know, and so tell me about it and show me, you know, what it is, and then we can discuss what might be the difference between you, Will, and them, you know, and the kind of conditions outside, live in the city streets or the country lanes or the forests, or, you know, whatever it is, that make education a really live and interesting experience.
I think that's a really good point.
What was the question exactly in that? Like, yeah, I want to bring new ideas and new perspective, of course, compare and contrast. But I missed your question, maybe?
Well, it wasn't a question, it was an observation, really. In other words, okay, so the question is, you direct them, as it were, towards the internet, and I'm saying, why don't you direct them towards their home patch? Do you see what I mean?
This is this is a great thought. Part of me really is wondering, like, maybe this is the wrong like format for this. I think there's certain limitations that meeting on a computer screen is, like, we're going to be limited. Anything that they can make or create, it's got to come from their household, maybe what their parents can buy, and like the things that they have. If I had a shop or a studio or a physical building that I could stock with creative materials and get people to come here, this would be another thing. But yeah, like, being on the other end of a computer screen, this is a significant challenge, and maybe this is not the appropriate format to do this. But I don't know. This is kind of how I've been working, and I want to see what I can do in this format, even though it may not be ideal. But I think there's still, teachers always have to adapt to the the circumstances, and so I guess this is what I'm trying to do. And yeah, I don't know, this is probably not optimal, but I still think we can do a lot of great work. And yeah, directing towards local resources, I think, is, almost essential, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
What else?
It's very interesting, Will, because like Mark, I'm into primary music, and I nearly always forget to say to the children when I first meet them, as I forgot at the beginning of this term, so what's the music that you have experienced? What music do you like? I immediately, if you like, almost impose my style because I think I've got something to give them before I've asked them what their musical experience has been, which in some cases can be very considerable. There was one girl I'm teaching in a Year 4 classroom at the moment, and there's one girl with a Spanish background. And she happens to be a very good musician, and there might be a whole experience there which might teach me a thing or two. So it's that thing about finding out how the child, what the child's experience has been before you start saying, well, let's do this, that, or the other.
Yeah, it really seems to me that what you're doing is you're creating an environment or a world that they can be part of, that you can share and take that. So, like, if you take your example, Pip, you're setting that kind of musical world up which you can then share your experiences and what you're doing, and from that the project might become a music-based project. It might be something they can play or share or record or compose or whatever it happens to be. If you don't have any preconceived ideas, all you're doing is opening this sort of safe environment for them to do it. So whether it's an arts-based thing, whether it's a sports-based thing, whether it's an academic subject-based thing, or a community endeavor, or whatever it happens to be, I like that idea of just, this is kind of what I've experienced and what I've done, and then from there certain nuggets will sort of come out, which will, like I said, if you want a project to really develop from and flourish from those sort of seeds, then you kind of need to give it enough breadth to sort of grow organically, which is quite hard when you're trying to sort of start by sort of writing out what a system is or what a product's going to be.
This is kind of the challenge of teaching, right? To get out of the way, and like the parents of the children have ideas about maybe what they should be studying. Maybe I've got ideas about what we should do, but I think the best learning really happens when, and if the goal is maximum learning and exploration and curiosity, the best thing we can do is really get out of the way and allow the students to take over and pick their own path. And this is not always, I don't think they have a lot of opportunities to do this oftentimes, and not always an easy thing to do. When I read the vision for the Oxford School of Thought, it was kind of a challenging summer for me. So when I discovered, or when I read the vision after you sent this to me, it was kind of like a light bulb moment. Like, all these things that I've kind of come to these conclusions, like somebody else has come to them also. This is a really affirming moment for me, and yeah, it made me feel like I was on the right path and doing something really important and meaningful.
Will, can I ask you, because you sort of mentioned parents, so when you first meet a child, as it were, is it with the parents, and then are the parents sort of included along the way, as it were, and consulted with and so on, and kept in tune and satisfied?
Yeah. It kind of depends. Generally speaking, it's the parents who will contact me, and this will be the first conversations. We'll be messaging on some app or another, and so I want to know about the child first of all, what they're interested in, and maybe the goals. What would we like to be working on? What's our goal here? And then we usually have a first meeting. We see, are we a good match to work together? And then maybe I will present my plan based on their goals and their child's level. And I would say initially I get quite a bit of interaction and feedback, but I often tend to work with people for a long term, which is good because you can really build this rapport, build this relationship, build a space where they know that I care about them and they feel like this is a place where I can experiment and try to be a little. This is essential to make this kind of safe atmosphere for learning and creativity. But the parents, I would say their interaction, it goes down after some amount of time, and I appreciate this in some ways because I do like to be, like, let me just do my thing. I appreciate the trust, but it's awful nice to have some feedback. Sometimes goals change, and it's good to know this, right? So I would say initially I get a lot of response and feedback, but as time goes by, this kind of dwindles, and this can be frustrating for me personally.
You might know about a place that's started about 100 years ago called Summerhill School. I don't know if you've heard of it. Well, it's a school where
Pip brought this to my attention.
Yeah, which Pip and I visited there, and also another school called the Tree House, which is near Oxford, where children have a major say in what they're going to learn, and we found it fascinating. as former head teachers, I think the big thing that we perhaps found was the frightening prospect of not managing everything, micromanaging everything that was going on. That's a very difficult thing to sit back and let it happen. But it was really exciting to see these children constructing their own curriculum and constructing their own timetables and deciding what they would be doing when they wanted to do it, and to be guided around Summerhill by a young lady who was about to finish there and go off to college, but who said, well, actually, I didn't like maths, so I didn't used to go and do maths at all. And then I discovered a couple of years ago or last year that I needed to be able to have maths as an exam to get to college. So I went and did the maths exam. I studied for a year really intensely when I was ready to, and then learned what I needed to pass the exam, which is, not a pattern that most people in education and schooling, I should say, not a pattern that most people in schooling think is possible. There's a very rigid system that we have of fitting children all the way through schooling into square pegs into square holes. We don't allow them to actually develop as themselves. And I think what you're doing is a possible way of allowing children to develop as themselves. I think that's really important.
I think also,
if our children are really lucky, Will, the Prime Minister will suggest that they learn maths up to the age of 18.
Indeed.
How lucky can we get?
Yeah. I think also one of the things that I've really heard a lot on the podcast recently is that sense of education is changing bit by bit, because people are wanting to have more control over, like Peter was saying, how they're learning. And that might not be that you can go to a completely independent school, whether that's private or public, or a particularly sort of set up school that's going to help you in that. But you can just go to school because you have to. But it might be that you only sort of take part in that in a way that's supportive for you. But with people like yourself, Will, who are starting new things and having the opportunity to be able to learn and be creative and do things in a slightly different way, then people, I think, are starting to buy into that, because what they want to do is they want to say, I want this type of education for my children, and they're enjoying what they're doing. A little bit like you're going to go and do a sports club, or you're going to do a music club. We want to show these things because we know the world needs it. We know the children need it. We know it's supportive in so many different ways. And because it's accessible now, like you said, it may well be sort of online based to begin with, but there's no reason why the stuff that you're creating and making then can't be posted or shared in a different way. I mean, there are lots of options like that. So I think it's just being able to show that it is possible. And I think the more that you do it and the more sort of testimonials and case studies that you have about things that have happened, the more it'll be easier to share that message and show what it actually looks like, in the same way as, like I said, if you're going to sign up to a football club, you know what the age range is, you know the sport you're going to be doing, you know the system and how it works. It's much harder to explain that in a way that you're doing until people come really sort of familiar with that as a concept. And also, like I say, you've got those sort of case studies to show this is where we went with this particular project based on this particular child. But even if the actual material is different, you can see how fluid it was and how all those skills that we've been talking about are going to sort of come into place.
Does occur to me, Will, you could probably have quite a lot of fun with the mantle of the expert approach and role play. And you could appear on screen as many different kinds of characters. That could be a lot of fun. No, sorry, it was just a thought that occurred. And you'll know, if you look on Oxford School of Thought, you'll see Duncan Bathgate and his then deputy Kelly talking about how they plan mantle of the expert. But yeah, that thought really, that could be very amusing, and education should be amusing. Children just love having laughter and jokes and and doing some enactments and role play themselves.
I really like that, and I also think it ties in really nicely to what you
I
said before, Pip, about the opportunity of sharing your things that you like as well, because you're part of this project too. So you want to be able to show up and actually enjoy what you're doing. So if the role play is something you love, then you should go do it sort of full bore. But whatever that passion is, it kind of that'll come across and be really, I think, make the children really responsive to what you're doing.
Yeah.
Sorry, Peter, were you coming in there for a second?
It was Will, I think, who was going to say something.
I was just going to say that I did look into this mantle of the expert, and I was thinking about how this could be adapted. I think this works really well in a group setting and in person. It might lose something when it's individual and over the screen. But this is, of course, not to say that it's not a good idea and I shouldn't be, using it and attempting it and things like this. Of course, I'm always looking for new ideas and how to adapt and how to best utilize these different ideas. So I definitely appreciate it. I want to say something about what you said a couple minutes back, Mark. You mentioned about showing possibilities, and really this is what I'm trying to live, like show the world basically that there's different ways to do things, like things are a certain way right now, and maybe there's a reason for them for things to be this way, but this is not the only way, right? And we need to be open to different ways and different ideas as times change, and just being aware that there's lots of different possibilities. I'm trying to be a living example of there's a different way. This is not the only way. This is not the only thing, and maybe we can do better if we do things a little bit differently. Think a little bit differently.
I think it's a really key takeaway, that as well, and it'd be interesting to see with the change of government, if there is a change of government, whether education does change in any shape or form. Peter, what's your initial thoughts? Have you heard anything as information officer of NAPE or anything related to the primary umbrella group, and in terms of possibilities of a change of scenery in some way or another?
I've heard there's a lot of hope out there, Mark. Whether that hope will turn into reality is yet to be seen. Well, it can't get any worse. That's all I can say. That's well, we hope so. Anyway, I'm constantly staggered by the mismanagement of not just education in this country over the last decade or so, but many other things. But I mean, just the recent events where budgets were set and then with it, well, interestingly, discovered to be wrong, and then nobody was told about it for a month, and then it was announced and told, no, you're not going to have that much money after all, when people had already been working on it. It's incredible. You would not imagine that happening anywhere else except in the public sector, particularly in education, it seems to me. And I think there was somebody that once said things can only get better, and I think that possibly they can. I know that Pip has got, and we're trying very hard to make contact with various policymakers. We aren't proud, we'll talk to anybody, but we are trying hard to make them understand that there are different ways of doing things. But going back to what you were saying about being inspired by the stuff in Vision for the Future, is interesting. When we started writing that report and writing that paper, the thing that drove us on was that these were ideas that had been floating around for 30 years at least while we were in education in schools, and we believed in, and nobody had anything about it. And it was astonishing, and we couldn't believe it. And people we talked to leading educationists. We talked to Sir Tim Brickhouse, we talked to Mick Waters, we talked to Sir John Jones, we talked to all sorts of people who said, yeah, these are the right ideas. This is what we all want to put in place. And it hasn't happened. And that's the big question mark. It's what we believe in NAPE, those sorts of ideas. And yet we've been trying to make it happen in NAPE, and we've tried to make it happen in OST. to actually find some traction and get somebody taking it on board and being prepared to put it into place, is a challenge. And I'd be interested to read my dossier that you referred to earlier, Pip. I suspect that the DFE have got a very thick one on me.
So we're going to start to round up very shortly, but if you are watching and you want to share anything based on what we've been talking about, or just let us know where you've been watching from, it would be really interesting to see who's happy to be here live and share their thoughts. And Pip, is there any sort of passing bit of wisdom to sort of start to round off that you'd like to share?
Oh goodness, not wisdom, but the observation really. Well, it's a reiteration. When you have a government who wants to concentrate on the fact that 18-year-old, up to 18, you're going to be learning maths all the time, when actually there are no, or there are insufficient maths teachers in the country in the first place. So a lot of work would have to be done to actually put that into action, when the money would be far better spent on early years. And really, that's what we're going to bleat on about, how important those foundation blocks are, how important it is that we give children breathing space to take and make their own actions and follow their own interests.
Yeah, I love it. And Will, in terms of what we've discussed, is there any particular takeaway you think is going to be helpful or supportive, or anything you'd like to share?
I would just say there's magic all around, and when you open your mind, when you open your heart, you can see it. And keep your eyes open, and keep your mind open, and yeah, there's a different way.
Fantastic. And finally, Peter, thanks so much for sharing and also all the work you do with NAPE as well. If there was one thing that you'd like the Oxford School of Thought to be able to influence, what do you think that would be?
Bring back Sure Start. Simple.
I love that. I know that's something that Wendy Scott has talked about a lot, isn't it, in the meetings, about what a great thing it was, how it was helping so many people, and how it being chopped down at the roots so quickly just took out so much information and support for people that really needed it. And that's a really great shout, a really great way of rounding off everything that we've been doing. So I really appreciate that. Let me just bring up again the details for you. So Independent English and the Oxford School of Thought. Thank you very much to all of you for taking part. And Will, first of all, just tell people where they can go to find out more and to connect with you if they'd like to.
www.independentenglish- www.independent-english.com or independent.english on Instagram.
Fantastic. And I think that website's going to be in the description of this video as well. And Peter, Oxford School of Thought?
Oxford School of Thought, you can just Google OST and you get Oxford School of Thought, comes up as the first thing actually from Wikipedia. I haven't read it, but it'd be interesting to see what it says. But Oxford School of Thought, whatever it might be, I think it's .org actually.
Yeah. But
it's there on the website.
Fantastic. Well, again, thank you very much for taking part. Thank you so much for sharing all this wisdom. This is what we're really here to do, is to give the opportunity for people to share these thoughts, start the discussion off, and for people to be able to watch and be part of it as well. So yeah, really do appreciate it. And just before we sort of finish, I'm just going to take you through to a couple of things that we talked about before in terms of a past show. And I just wanted to share this one because Michael was live here last week. And as I mentioned at that stage, 333 was his particular episode. and he is very much into how these multi-sensory ideas of art and the things that he's doing from a creativity point of view, and also from a standing point, as it says there, some of the struggles that he had when he was in education and when he was learning, and the things that kind of really helped and supported him as he was going through his education, but also then as he got older as well, and how he then wanted to show up in the world and help and support other people. So I do highly recommend that as well. And as with all of the descriptions on the show notes, you can always click straight through and find out more about the people behind it, and also the things that they're actually sharing as well. So yeah, thank you so much indeed for being here. I really appreciate it. As I said before, as I mentioned towards the beginning, please do also make sure you subscribe to give us an opportunity to keep up to date with everything that we're doing. Anything that you want to do in terms of getting hold of me, educationonfire.com will do that, and that way you can send me a message, and we can chat, and if I can support you in any way, I'll be delighted to do that. So yeah, thank you very much indeed, and we will see you again very, very soon next week at 7:30 UK.